Hey guys, this is Mike JC. Just wanted to try something new with this video and kind of go over my process for this Inktober. I kind of came up with the idea to do a comic based on the How to Draw Comics forum on Facebook, our group. And I was like, man, that'd be a really good idea and a cool challenge. So I decided to give it a try. The idea really came from somebody made a post saying, hey, who's going to be doing Inktober this year? Anybody got any cool ideas? And usually during Inktober, they put up prompts, something to give people kind of some inspiration for each daily drawing. And I, being the psychopath I am, decided, what if I got all those prompts, because they post them all up early, and wrote and made a story with them. And I kind of came up loosely with this kind of Flash Gordon-esque Buzz Lightyear character, Jetpack Jordan, and decided to tell a story of her trying to get this ring. It took me about a week in the last week of September to kind of think of how was I going to connect the story to each prompt. Some were super easy and some were way harder on myself, and some of them I just blatantly cheated. And I was pretty happy with how it came out. Kind of my writing process, when I'm just doing a normal comic, I kind of came to that with this one, except obviously there wouldn't be any layouts, was I work backwards. Meaning I write the end of the story first, and then I write the beginning and try to work towards that point. Usually I think of the moral or the kind of end point, so to speak. And I had a good idea with this idea of this ranger trying to get a ring. And I saw the last prompt was risk. And I was like, man, what's like one of the riskiest things you could do? It's like asking somebody to marry you. And I was like, that'd be a good endpoint. That's why this character is doing all this. And just kind of ran from there. So the main program I used for all this was Procreate, which has become my end-all be-all drawing program. I literally use it every day. I came from 22 years experience with Photoshop, but I use pencil, pen, and ink for all my life until probably the last couple years when I really hard leaned into the digital. And I really do think people need to learn traditional and then move into digital. I'm a firm believer of the learn how to do it the hard way so you understand why the shortcuts work. And that's what I really like about Procreate, is that it is shortcuts, but it is probably the second best drawing program in my opinion, right behind Clip Studio. The reason I like Procreate more is that it's super intuitive and simple. I feel like Clip Studio always needed to have a kind of a deeper dive understanding. But the other thing I love is I love time lapse. I love, like you're seeing on the screen, these looking at your strokes. It saves like almost every other stroke. I remember reading about the science behind it. It's pretty simple. It saves like every 20th stroke or something crazy like that. And it presents in this badass time lapse. So I guess I can start talking about each individual one. We've kind of gone through some of them. A lot of these I think right now this is not. So I was like, oh, it would be really cool. The sign I established earlier in the scene, she would turn that into a lasso and would grab onto the ship. I tried to make her design as simple as possible to make it, one, easier for me to draw, so I'm going to be drawing every day this exact same character. One, entertaining for me to draw. And two, it would have to have a very strong silhouette. Now, I will say, looking back at all of these, I was a little weak on really showing off her jetpack and her flying. But I think most people got it. If anything, I cheated because it's her freaking name. And now is our second main character, the space... what is he? A raven, space raven. And I kind of wanted something comedic. And since I worked backwards, I needed somebody to get her the ring based on what I had written that she would be injured. And I was like, okay, I'll set up it's a writing trope called Chekhov's laser. You can actually see me using my own self as a reference on that little shot. And that was Space Raven. She hits him and his little murder of crows. I think it's crows is a murder, so I'm not sure what you would call a bunch of ravens. And basically, he goes on from, what would this be, the 5th image on. I think I tried to incorporate him almost any image that would be a close-up. Just this poor little bird who's just like, oh my gosh, why am I here? What is going on? So one quick thing I love about Procreate is that you can take a quick photo. It's on an iPad. And you can use it as reference. And you just saw me use that because I could not get that hand down. One thing that has always been a weakness of mine has been references. And I always never felt comfortable using them. I used to have that very wrong mentality of, oh, it's cheating to use photo reference and stuff. And now I'm at this point where I'm like, screw it. Whatever gets me to the ending, it makes it look good. And you're never going to look better than real life. And as you'll see, it really helped me out on a lot of scenes. You'll probably see my little head pop up or a photo pop in every now and then. And that's just me using my references as best I can. And another element I always kind of use is references from other artists, because these feathers, I kind of got this element from, if I remember, Mike Mignola draws his feathers like this. And I was really inspired by that. Probably my biggest inspirations art-wise are Mike Mignola, J. Scott Campbell, David Finch, Jim Lee. I love Adam Hughes, but that man is far too beyond us mere humans for me to glean anything from him. Same with Mark Silvestri. I've studied them multiple times. I just can't figure it out. And I tend to take bits and pieces from artists I like to make my own kind of style. And just my own aesthetics. Like, as you can probably tell from these, I love hard darks and blacks. I think I get that from my love of Mike Mignola. And cute characters, cute girls. That's quintessential J. Scott Campbell. That's definitely where that's coming from. And you're really seeing a lot of that action movement. You saw it on the Crow one, or Ravens. I'm going to keep mixing those up constantly, so I apologize. A blur effect that I really love that I got from Daniel Warren Johnson. He just finished up an amazing Beta Ray Bill run for Marvel Comics. And he has this blur effect that he adds where it's just like dash lines following the motions, but it's not like a typical like speed lines. It's really cool. You can definitely see it when you look at the previous image with the ravens. There's a foreground raven who's flapping his wings, and you can see that blur effect. Matter of fact, on this one, you can see the blur effect right here on Space Raven's wings right now. So this is the one where I believe it was Fan. And I always feel like a bunch of these, like, I cheated, and I always want somebody to be like, okay, I see what you did there. Also, you'll also see frequently, I like to fill out the space with these little like crosshatch dash marks. That's a cool brush that comes standard on Procreate that I kind of found just goofing around. And it really filled up the space. When I was doing studies of Jorge Jimenez, people were saying, you gotta study him. And I was studying him, but he was doing things that is not possible with traditional medium. He's using unique brushes that I can't figure out how to replicate. So if anyone's got any advice, I'd love to hear the comments on what exactly he's doing. I figured out he's using Manga Studio, but I can't for the life of me figure out that brush, how he's doing his buildings. Well, that's it. He has very exaggerated features and movement that I really wanted to capture. And I really loved using Daniel Warren Johnson and Jorge Jimenez's kind of gestures. And really, as a matter of fact, on this image, you'll kind of see my influence, Mike Mignola. I think I was inspired by those kind of 1950s TV ads. And I really wanted to get movement in all of these individual images. I think this is the one for watch. And this is one where I also kind of cheat the story. If you look at each, there's 2 or 3 times where someone's watching television, and the television just basically gets you caught up along the story. Just little conceits I always use to get the story along, since for 99% of this, it was wordless. Another one, I used pressure, because I was like, oh, pressure could be interpreted in different ways. So I was like, okay, the pressure of her going into the atmosphere, okay, that's going to be pretty scary. And there's Space Raven just kind of hanging on. There's a couple of these where I would finish the image, and I would remember oh crap, I forgot to draw in Space Raven. And I'd have to like go back and figure out what would make sense and go from there. And as you can see, I'm really working with these layers and lines for Procreate, and it's just so intuitive. There's so many brushes you can download. I'm a big supporter of this program. Had very few problems with it. If there's anything, again, these guys ain't paying me. I wish they would, right? And they have some of the best customer service I've ever seen for any art program or just application in general. I mean, I contacted these guys once because like my the relapse wasn't working, and they got back to me in like 2 hours on like a Saturday. I was like, this is nonsense. People shouldn't be this good. What? And now you have where we're at now. These are some more of me kind of, for lack of a better word, filling out space of the story, because there were some moments where I was like, I don't know how this progresses the story, but I gotta fill out the space. Now, obviously, any normal Space Ranger would just have a button to activate her helmet, but I was like, I believe this was pick. So I was like, oh, okay, she could pick her helmet. Got it, guys. Golf clap. And I ended up having to do some quick research on different helmets really quickly. Google is always my friend. My setup is 2 computer screens and my iPad, and Google on one screen, YouTube on another screen, and I'm drawing while listening to YouTube. And those helmets were just research Google. I just looked up helmets, realized I couldn't see the back of them because of the angle, and then I Googled back of helmets. Google has everything. It's crazy. This is why it's taking over our life. Now, this is another one where, again, this is just a definite cheat because the prompt was sour. So I was like, I can't figure out how to make that work at this point of the story. So I'm going to cut to an alien kid eating sour candy and also use this as a cheat to get people caught up on where we are currently at in the story. I don't know what I put here, but I think this is the point in the story. Crazy cadet chases bad guy. So this is a part of the story where I also established this is a space cadet, not so much fully a ranger. And also you saw a quick glimpse of it in my character designs. I usually do very simple character designs, kind of making them on the fly. I know I should be more complex on that, but I'm lazy, and this was for free, Inktober. And I just decided I'm going to save myself a few moments, and I cut out that image to put on the television screen. Again, Procreate is shockingly simple. If you have any experience with Illustrator, Photoshop, Clip Studio, you get Procreate, you're going to jump into it like just a fish to water. It did help me a lot. I got a great video by an artist, another favorite artist of mine named Robatto, Robatto. I believe he does a website, but he has a tutorial about drawing pinup art, like sexy girl pinup art using Procreate. And I bought 2 of those tutorials, and I learned everything I need to learn from Procreate. It's out of date because he's using an older model, but just like Photoshop, I can show you a video of someone using Photoshop 3 and you would still understand how to use Photoshop today. And I use those elements even to this day, about laying out the layouts, the gesture commands. You want a pro tip with Procreate for sure. One thing I do wear a glove when I draw so it doesn't register my palm, but I did cut off palm control on the Procreate settings. And what that does is it makes it to where it only registers my pen to make marks. But if I want to use gestures, my palm and hand will register, but it won't make marks. It's a really cool feature, and for the life of me, I did these Ninja Turtles pages. They were torturous for a long while because I could not figure out why it was registering the side of my hand. And I Googled it. Again, everyone loves Google. And that was the issue. I had palm control on. So the other one we're on is tick. Obvious question is, why does this bad guy stealing a diamond have a giant tick? Which, if you pay close enough attention, it's explained. His little ray gun thing turns things into like extinct creature monsters. So clearly he must have been testing it, and it turned this tick, and it decided to jump outside and just met Jordan. And the tick one was one where I was like, went to my aesthetics, my favorite things to draw. If somebody says, what is your kind of artist thesis? It's Pretty Girls, Monsters, and Action. That's even the name of my Substack. I absolutely adore drawing these 3 things. You give me those, I'll draw for you forever. And here you can see that element's kicking in, especially with this tick design. I just Googled research on tick. Gross little sons of guns. I hate these things. And I just had a really cool surprise shot of the character. Ignore the gratuitous TNA, but you'll always know when I started getting bored drawing something, because they'll start being more gratuitous shots or sexier girls, or oh, hey, I dropped this penny, let me bend down and go grab it. So this was I believe, Tick. Yeah, that was Tick. And now you see me, I could not get this angle correct. So you see me trace a 3D model. I had, it is called Artifacts or Artcoon. Now I have another application I use 100% for 3D heads and hands called Handy. It's on the Apple Store. Use that all the time. But I just couldn't get that angle right, so I ended up tracing it. And then I think this was Crack. So I have the Tick attack her and start cracking the helmet. Don't ask questions why she hadn't shot this thing yet, because she has a cartoonishly powerful laser on her left hand. So this was another one. Well, I was just like, let's see if we can kind of stretch this out filler. The next one, though, was one I just hard cheated on, because I believe it was Compass. And I couldn't figure out how in the world could I make a compass work. So the original one, you'll see in the sketch, there's little arrows that say compass here. And originally it was her holding a compass. But I was like, that's lame. So I decided, what if the tick was like a compass? Again, doesn't make sense. But cool beats correct every time. Now also, you may be seeing, maybe wondering, why are these sketches just popping in? So what's happening with those? On a previous, a layer you can't see, it's actually not even on a layer, on another file, I drew out a 31 panel layout for it. I guess I should explain this. There's 2 types of scripts. There's Marvel style scripts and standard scripts. Standard scripts is what you would see for a movie studio. Panel A, this person does this and says this. Panel B, or panel 2, this person does this and says this. And they leave it up to artists to get the layout and stuff right, but it's for the most part very structural. Marvel style was coined from Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, where Stan Lee would make an outline of a story. Jack Kirby or Ditko, whoever was working with him as collaborator, would then draw out the story, to which you would then go back to Stan Lee, and he would write out the dialogue for it. I do that with myself. I tend to not like doing that with writers, because I have very little trust in other people's stories. Very few people. And when it comes to myself, I know the plot points I'm trying to get to. So what I did with this one was I made the layouts. I wrote the story, and I wrote plot points that have to happen or things I need to focus on. And then the outlines are one big image. So I took those out and copy and pasted them each onto this file that you're seeing in the time lapse. And that's why it just looks like the sketches just pop in. These are actually very small sketches blown up. And this is actually one of my favorite pages. I believe this was Collide. And I was like, oh, this is going to be my showstopper. This thing was awesome. I forgot who inspired those splatter effects, but that spaceship was this, I was like, I need a cool retro spaceship from Google, and I kind of looked up some inspirations and kind of merged them together for this design. Rip that guy's paint job, though. And that one really came out. I remember running in some issue, I'm like, it really doesn't feel the impact. And then I add the speed lines, like, there it is. This is another cheat one, I call it, because this one took me maybe an hour, because some of these I did 3 to 4 a day. So behind the curtain secret, I'm not doing these once every day. I'm doing them ahead of time, so that way, in case something comes up, in case, I get sick or I need to drive somebody and I just don't have time, I have them in the barrel to load, and I'm already 3 to 4 ahead. Here's another one. Actually, if I remember, this one was Loop. And I remember I drew in Jordan, and if I remember correctly on this one, I forgot to draw in Space Raven, and I had to go in retroactively and redraw him in. Actually, it looks like I drew him in immediately, but you see in my original layout, he was not there. So I had to redesign him. And you can even see me using Procreate's cut and paste tools, because I had to cut Jordan The composition didn't work. She made a really bad tangent. A tangent is when one line in the background is exactly the same as a line in the foreground. It really messes with your depth of your image. You lose a lot of the illusion of depth. So I had to copy and paste her and move her, and I think that image came out around. This is one of the ones that was the hardest and took me like a day and a half. Another reason why it's great to work early. And it's just a very complex shot. It's got a foreground, a middle ground. You've got the villain stepping down. Think about all that's happening in this shot and just how complex it was and how much I had to tell in here. You have to tell that she's stepping down through the hole she made in the ship. Again, don't ask questions why it's not sucking her out of the arrow. Actually, no, that actually makes sense. Go me, I'm smart enough thought. They haven't completely broken the atmosphere yet. Well, not only do I have to establish here that the bad guy is now in the room with her, she has dropped down through a hole she has made, and the Space Raven is there, and she's being shot at, and I have to set up that he's missing his shots for the next panel. This is probably one of the most complex ones, because I would say this is probably the beginning of Act 3, if we're looking at the comic as a 3-act structure. This is our crescendo. We built up with her hanging on to the ship for this whole time, and now we're on the wind down. We're about to hit the wind down of her taking on the main villain, who I don't remember the name. I don't even think I gave him a name. I just made a cool, badass pig villain criminal design. I kind of thought, like, what kind of villain would Buzz Lightyear face when he's not facing evil and berserk? And that's kind of what I came up with. There's kind of my Magnolia blacks. I always love that effect. And you can see here, I also need to establish that his gun causes plants to grow. So I have like this ray gun effect I made. You can see me kind of testing out some different effects, see what's gonna look good. Make the blacks, make sure nothing's overlapping, add some speed lines for some a little bit more drama. And I really had to make those plants pop. And now I've led all the, and actually this is one of the few panels I think has sound effects. And now I have set it up. And also if you look closely, you can tell he used the diamond that he stole in the gun, which is being used to make these plant things. So now that I've set this up, it now makes it a lot easier going forward for the next parts. As you'll see here, the plants that were set up in the previous panel have turned into creatures, which if you're paying attention, you'll be like, oh, those are the ones she was there. And I also did my best not to break the 180 rule. I would heavily recommend looking it up. I really wouldn't be able to do justice to how it's explained. But it's basically you don't want your camera jumping to different sides of the picture plane. It's the way David Finch put it is if you're looking at hockey teams playing each other, they always have the camera facing one way. They never switch to the other side because then you'd be confused. You'd be like, well, which way's the goal poster on that? They always have it facing one way. And the same applies to comic book art. You always want to have your characters at least facing the same way or have at least a panel transitioning that they're changing directions. And also another trick I learned from David Finch is having lights to dark. Note with the plant creatures, the foreground ones are light and the backgrounds are dark, and it makes them pop. You can also reverse this where they're dark up front and the background are light. It gives a lot of depth to the characters and also adds a layering effect that really makes them pop. And as you saw, I went back because I forgot to draw on her helmet, so I had to go back to the previous helmet because I forgot that hole is still open. And now we have another shot where, again, I have to still you always have to remember elements you have set up previously. So now I have set up that she is blowing out another hole in the ship to get rid of the plant monsters. So I had to remember there were plant monsters. Then I had to remember there's a hole in the ship. And you can really see these creatures just getting dragged out. So I actually had to have my iPhone open with the creatures. I just designed them on the fly, so there was no preconceived design for them. So, and this is another element I had to really teach myself with these. Even though that little line in the background is to imply that's the ship's hull, I didn't even used to do that. I've really had to struggle with backgrounds. That's always been a big weakness of mine, so I'm really learning into that. And there's these little plant creatures I made on the fly. My friend Devin, shout out to Devin. He always point out my design aesthetics with my creatures is lots and lots of teeth. I don't know where I get that design aesthetic from, but I love rows upon rows of teeth. It has always been a thing I love in my creature designs. And whenever you know it's a Mike JC creature trope when there's just way too many rows of creatures. And splatter effects. I really love splatter effects since I can actually do them now way easier without a bunch of setup. I used to have to do it traditionally with an old toothbrush and ink and splatter, and I have to get newspaper around with Procreate and applications. It's just a brush. And I love it. So I'm now back into my splatter game. Now this is one thing I would have loved to have changed. I would have liked to have seen more shots for me with the villain, just really showing off this villain design, and I never really was able to show it off like I would have liked. And this is our first and really only shot of this guy really up front. I have him reacting to it. If you were to put the two images together, my original plan was the previous image and this one to be one long piece if you connect it, where the hole was in the center. Compositionally wise, it just didn't work, so I decided to just make it to where he is now reacting to what she has done and is also being sucked out. And if you look closely, you can see he has shot himself in the hand. This is something I really had to plan, and I do this a lot. I always love it when stories where something pays off in the story that was set up previously that maybe you didn't notice. Like somebody slips on a marble, but if you go back to in Act 3, and if you go back to Act 1, you will see where somebody dropped a marble or was looking for something on the ground. I love that kind of stuff. And here, you see the ray gun accidentally hit himself out of his panic. He's like, oh gosh. Although I'm not sure if he could say that, he didn't have lips, but maybe there's my second use of special effects. Just some cool debris. Debris pattern I've learned how to put out debris was from David Finch. He always has a pattern. He goes by large debris, small debris, medium debris, and he puts it randomly. So that way it's always kind of truly random. And it turns out it works. I've been using that for like a year. Next one was, this one I think took some heavy editing. And still wasn't happy. This is one that I'm torn on because I may have inadvertently broke the 180 rule, but the way I originally planned it was, I guess I should explain, Americans read left to right. So when I designed the shot, you read it naturally, originally, left to right. So you can clearly see he is turning into this creature. However, I think I flipped it so that it would not be 1-1 to the next panel. Unfortunately, this gave the illusion, if you weren't paying attention, that it was a dinosaur turning into the pig man. It seems like it was like 30, a half and half. Some people got it, some people didn't. I think one, actually, you know what? It's probably less. I think one person was mistaken that it was, he was turning into the pig. Everyone else got that, no, he's transforming into it. However, I think there would have been no question about it if I had left it how it was. And you see me adding my splatter effects. And then, this is why I switched it, because you see the head is still facing the same way. And I flipped it because that way it makes it look like, oh, he's coming now at her, and then she shoots him, and he's backing up. By the way, this panel right here is pure me. Like, this is a monster being shot by a cool, hot action heroine, debris, explosion. This is just pure me. And this was inspired by kind of Daniel Warren Johnson does these kind of explosions, and James Heron. I just recently got introduced to him. He does a book called Ultra Mega, which is like a big badass kaiju. I would not be surprised if I find out him and Daniel Warren Johnson trained under like the same school or teachers, because they have very similar aesthetics. And I love how James Heron draws explosions. And it's almost like he uses like a bold, chalky charcoal. And it took me forever to find a brush that mimicked it on Procreate. And Procreate's very, very deep. So it had it. I just had to find it. And I studied James Heron for about like a few hours. Really saw how he did these explosions. And I was like, all right, I think I got it. And there you go. And this is probably one of my favorite panels here. And I really kind of tried to get this blast effect. I just love the darks he adds into it. So I'm happy with how this came out, and it's almost exclusively thanks to like James Heron, You can see a lot of my inspirations all in this like one panel. This panel sums me up in my art preferences pretty well. And here you can see where I'm flipping the dinosaur. Again, my intent was he's turning towards her, and then he's turning back around. I don't think it worked as well as I intended, but it still came out pretty nice. This next one was Connect, the one you're seeing on screen. And Connect was another one where I was like, I know I have to have a specific thing happening in the scene, but I think I can cheat it a bit by also progressing the story. So here is your first glimpse why she's fighting over this ring, that she's trying to call someone. So you see it trying to connect, and I had to Google. I see my phone every day, but I could not figure out what the symbol would be for a Wi-Fi or a phone not connecting. So I Googled that, looked it up, put it onto this little device. And this is our first indication that she is getting it for somebody she loves. And calling sweetie, I had the little bars, and then I put connecting. So I was like, okay, hard cheated that one, but I think people will get it. They progress the story and they now understand. And also, if you look here, I had to put notes to myself because remember I said I write Marvel style for myself. These were my notes to myself that I have to draw this thing here to progress the story. At this point in the story, here's where you see the ring is still in play, and it has the bird's been hit by it. So he is like, crap, I'm hanging on to this stupid ring. Or it's not even that he's hanging on, he's hit by it. And here's that kind of James Herron explosion, that chalky explosion. Like, God, I love it. I mean, I don't know what inspired it, but I love it, man. I got it from him. This kind of debris pattern I get from Daniel Warren Johnson. I love his kind of debris. So another panel I wasn't as happy with. I should have maybe used a 3D model. I used my own arm for reference. I think it came out solidly. But this is one where it's an effect I got from over a decade ago. Does anyone remember John Cassaday, who did Astonishing X-Men? Whenever he would do Astonishing X-Men, whenever he drew sparks, I don't know how to describe it, but he made them as tiny little squares. That's what I tried to replicate here. And whenever I draw sparks or anything like fizzing or sparking up, I always kind of think back to how John Cassaday did them in his Astonishing X-Men run, which is an amazing run, might I add, by Joss Whedon. And that's an effect I've been using for over a decade. And that is where that was coming from. And also just filling out some designs here. I had a little bit of stars. When I was done with the piece, I realized it was like, man, it's a little bit empty in the back. So I decided to add a little bit of dark. It's an old Wally Wood quote. When in doubt, black it out. And I have unfortunately learned that is more true than it should be. This one was the one that went through probably the most changes. Originally, it was supposed to be a big close-up of her free falling, and it was going to be like just like graffiti text, just saying, I suck, I couldn't do it, I failed, I'm a failure. And I realized, I was like, man, I think that's going to be just too much, even for this kind of lighthearted video. I'm sorry, this lighthearted comic. And I decided, you'll see me writing them in, I was trying to find like a cool kind of sketchy, like, oh man, like that kind of Take On Me music video where it's super sketchy and you don't know what's going on. Overall, I decided to just leave it with the smoke trail. I think this is another one where I kind of cheated the prompt, but I was like, people should get what I mean. And I had the smoke trails kind of coming from where she was going. I don't know where I got that from. I think that actually might have been a Mikey original. I think I just like, that would be really cool, her just this smoke trail coming behind her. And I think it came out okay. Here's where I was putting in the lettering. It didn't work. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to trust in my faith as an artist that I can relay that she's injured and sad. Okay, so then we have a cut. And this was Patch. And this was one I was like, okay, I made a note to myself, when you draw her, don't forget to put a patch over her eye and make her sad. This is some Alan Moore level, Stephen King level writing here, boys. So you see me doing the layouts for the hospital bed. I had to have some research for that one. I think I downloaded an image that I used to get the layout of it. And then I had an image on my computer to get all the buttons and stuff correct. Don't ask me why a futuristic space colony or whatever has a normal American hospital bed, but it's my comic. So then there's some, when I did the cast, I had to look up people in full body cast to see how they connected and all that stuff. I put a few references. Most horror fans, especially my best friend Devin, he's gonna definitely notice one of them on her cask. It says loser, but it's crossed out to say lover. That is a reference to one of my favorite horror movies. Well, part 1 of it is one of my favorite horror movies. Part 2, well, people sure did work on it. And that was a quick little reference. So here's Slither, another one I kind of cheated. I kind of tried to make wobbly lines so Space Raven was slithering onto her, because I said up earlier he had grabbed the ring. So of course he has survived and gotten the ring to her, and I even has a little piece of fire on his hair. Now don't ask why his hair stayed on fire in the amount of time that it took her to get found, get admitted to a hospital, get in a full body cast, but Space Raven found her and got her ring. And I was like, oh, that's gonna be sweet, no matter how cynical you are. Heavily researched neck brace. God, I hate drawing those things. They are an amazing invention, but they are a bitch to draw. And also, speaking of bitch to draw, I did not feel like having to redraw the graffiti in the exact way, so I went to the previous image, and you'll see I copy the graffiti from her board and then use the liquefy tool. I copy and paste it to this image and use the liquefy tool so it wraps around the band. So that's just the draw. I only drew this once. You know, you work smarter, not harder. And I didn't have to redraw the loser and all that stuff, and just wrapped it around her hand. And me just trying to test some patterns. Nothing really worked. This is another good thing. I do love traditional, and I still stand by traditional is going to always be there. I'm not saying it's dead. But one thing I do like about digital is that you get to experiment a lot more. And this is the first thing I think where I was like, it's not cheap, but I was like, this is the conclusion of the story, so I wanted to add it 6 months later. She's still injured, and this is where you kind of get the surprise that she is proposing to like her alien girlfriend or alien sweetie. I joked with a friend that's just her HR, and she's gonna get rid of after this. But just her love interest, you know, just like she went through all this hell to get to this point, and the risk is you don't know if she's gonna say yes or no. And that's was, I think, the kind of the moral story. You know, we do all these things for love, and we really don't know how it's gonna turn out or what it's gonna pay off, or even if it's meant to pay off. And that was kind of the moral underpinning of this little Inktober. And they have the little Space Raven and a little arm cross. Why? I thought it was adorable. That's why. So that's the other thing. I always, if you read my stories, you'll always see there's one trope that I always love. This is probably the Mr. Rogers in me. I love seeing people help people. This Space Raven was just hit and disturbed out of his way in this whole ordeal, and he still decided, I'm gonna grab this ring for her. He's like, clearly she's trying to like grab this ring. So I like the idea that people help people. So again, the testament to that. So there you go. Thank you for watching. I think that's all for this, and we'll see if I do this again. I don't know. This was a huge ordeal to get this all done, but I'm so glad I was able to get it done, and thank you all for watching. Bye.